Yeah, I feel like we were just getting started.
I know. I know. You know what? Whatever it is that we do, what I'm going to do is piece like part one and part two together so that it makes a cohesive whole. But I mean, I swear, the part you at the end of the last video, I didn't even edit it off because you did. Yeah, we were just getting started, and I just feel like you handled yourself well. I mean, you know, because the situation was so weird. And just so that you know, what happened was Mike. I don't know why, but sometimes when I'm on Zoom, I feel like I get hot. I know it's weird. And so a lot of times I'll go through like StreamYard or OneStream or some streaming service instead of going directly through Zoom. And I
Yeah.
know they've made some changes like how to stream into things. I don't, I'm not up on everything, but I know that sometimes it seems that my computer shuts down and that someone else gets control. Even I can see like something moving in my computer, so it's almost like a hacker can get in.
Ooh.
So I don't know how that is. I don't know enough
Yeah, I
about,
don't like that. Yeah.
but it just everything froze, and I could not control my computer at all. There was nothing to do but to shut it down and start over. I unplugged the cord to my router and just I don't even know how long it was before I plugged it back in.
Well, it was a while because I mean, I felt well, I'm sure it was not as long as it felt like because I'm just sitting there like, "Hello."
Oh, definitely you poor thing. I felt so bad when I looked at the video because I didn't get back on for like an hour at least
Yeah, because I
after
mean,
it
even
happened.
after I signed out, it was a while before I caught you on Facebook, and then
Oh
we were
yeah,
still talking, and you still didn't have anything.
I still
So,
didn't have it.
yeah.
I mean, it completely shut me down, and there something else happened. I mean, it was something weird that happened with my security system. Everything like they
Huh.
reinstalled. I had to reboot several times. It was
Gotcha.
not pretty. I
Well, at least that
what
happened
the
on your last one of the day and not like at one
I'm
o'clock in
glad
the
you're on my last one
afternoon.
of the day. This I know, and see, and good last. I'm glad you rescheduled as the last one of the day. I had two great women earlier, and for some reason, my 4 o'clock I had originally. This is why I double stacked because I think I had double stacked with yours too, right?
Yeah, there were
And
like four
yeah,
then, I think you said. Yeah,
right. My
crazy.
4 o'clock, there were four people, not one single one showed up.
That's just so I wonder I don't know if that's like a normal thing. I mean, I don't do my own podcast, so I don't have guests, so I don't
I
know if that's normal or if that's like if there's a percentage that you can expect or
I
not expect.
know. I
But that just
never
seems
knew.
really frustrating.
You know, it's so funny, and I don't know what made me stack guess the way I did. It was one of those Quentin Tarantino. I always say I do Quentin Tarantino moments, and that was one of those things like, oh, I'm going to be Superwoman, and I'm going to schedule 20 people for one day. Like, who
Yeah.
does that? But I knew it's like something in me knew, maybe from being in the business, that
Yeah.
people are flaky. They're naturally flaky. Plus,
Yep.
life happens. Look what happened with me. We were in the middle of an actual interview, and it's like I don't know if that was a hacker. I don't know if that was happening from like the internet network, or was it the router, or whatever it was so weird. I knew I had no choice but to just shut it down, pray, meditate, have some green tea.
Just wait till Mercury retrograde hits, girl. You might want to take that off for a little bit.
Yeah, because Mercury's in Gemini. We have a
It's
Gemini stellium right now, I believe.
oh,
If I recall, we had like Venus, Mercury, the North Node, the Moon was in it the other day. Like there's a lot of Gemini, and so it's been a very interesting couple of days. It's very interesting after that full or new moon in Taurus.
yeah.
So I want to give you an opportunity to once again introduce yourself and tell everyone what it is that you do, Jen.
Sure. I'm Jen Pearson. My business is called Lighten Your Space, and I am a Reiki Master. I do intuitive energy work. I'm also a shamanic breathwork facilitator and an ordained shamanic minister with that. And I do some spiritual coaching. So I do group and one-on-one coaching. I have a couple programs that I run every now and then, and I have a Facebook group that's free to join. So that's kind of a fun way for people to kind of get to know how I work and what my vibe is, because I can be a little different than some other energy workers sometimes. And I kind of like to take the people who are just getting into the woo-woo stuff and sort of help them balance that with what they call normal life. And, where does the woo-woo stuff fit in? What's too woo-woo for me? What's okay? And just kind of exploring things and seeing how it really can work, because I was that person who, like, I'm an audiologist also. I have like a super logical scientific job, and then I go and do shamanic breathwork, which is like the complete opposite of anything scientific. And I love it. And it has energy work, that kind of stuff has just opened so much healing for me. And I can't imagine, where I would be without it. And so I want to share it with people who are maybe a little hesitant, who, they don't want to go to someone named Starflower who lives on the top of the mountain. That's like a little too far from where they are. So I'm a good stepping stone for that. Starflower might be their teacher in a couple years, but right now they need something a little more like them. And so that's kind of where I come in.
That's hilarious, Jen, because earlier I talked with a older lady who's like just a few years older than me, but she's a witch. And she lives with her cat, and she wants to move into the woods. And I'm like, are we talking going into the crone years? Like, it was so amazing.
I'm right there too.
Conversation with her.
Yeah, my cat and I are ready to move to the woods too. I'm getting a head start on that.
That's hilarious. It's so funny when you were saying that, because I'm Capricorntigress, right? So it always throws people off. Like, yours Capricorntigress, and I've been that since 1990 something. It's like crazy.
I love that.
But now everyone's woo-woo. So it's just...
it's and that's kind of what it is. It's becoming more mainstream. So people are hearing about it, and their interest is kind of peaked. And like, everybody does meditation now. You turn on Netflix and there's like the Headspace guide, and my mom knows about meditation, and so that's kind of become not so weird. Here's my cat coming video here. And so, I think that then people start to hear it and they start to explore it. And there's so much on the internet. You start to Google things, and then you can go down this rabbit hole really fast of, what's for me and what's not for me. And some of it can sound scary, and some of it is like, maybe I want to explore it, but where do I even start? So,
It's so funny. I've been very interested in finding out, is there any kind of sample or example that you can do with me about the shamanic breathwork? I'm so interested.
Shamanic breathwork. I mean, I would love to do a session with you sometime. Like, maybe we can figure out a trade or something. I think that would be really fun. But I do, so every couple months I do a free 5-day event in my Facebook group, and it's about connecting to your intuition, and I call it Jumpstart Your Intuition. So I think the next one will be in July, and then probably September after that. I'm not sure, but sometime in the middle of July it'll come up. But we do like meditation and pulling cards, and just different ways to kind of get into your intuition and kind of maybe help you stop second guessing your intuition and just getting used to hearing that voice and listening to it, learning. And it just kind of, it's a jump start. It's not like a deep dive. We're not doing a whole lot of one-on-one stuff, but you do get a little bit of time there to work with that. And at the end of the week, I have a bonus for anybody who signs up, that we do a little shamanic breathwork journey. So it's not a full immersion. A full shamanic breathwork immersion is like a 2-hour deal. So this is like maybe 35 minutes. And so then the music, so shamanic breathwork is different than regular breathwork, or a lot of breathworks, I'll say, because there's so many kinds of breathwork. I don't think people realize there are breathwork practices like Wim Hof is kind of the big name in breathwork now, where he's the Iceman and he can change his body temperature and he can do all these like crazy, weird physiologic things that are really kind of cool and awesome with these certain breathing patterns that he does, that in his are quicker things that you could probably do here in a couple minutes, to share. And then the shamanic breathwork comes out of holotropic breathwork and rebirthing breathwork and Seneca clan teachings. There's a whole lot of things. Integrative breathwork is the other one. And so it's a long process. And what it is you have music playing really loud, and the music is designed in a certain way to take you on a journey and to activate the chakras and to help you kind of shake loose what you need to get rid of, and invite the energies that you need to heal or to nurture yourself with. And the breath pattern that you do is called conscious connected breathing, and it's this in and out pattern in a loop, so that there's not really a break in the breathing. And that helps to activate an altered state of consciousness. So it's almost like putting you in a dream state while you're still awake. So you can have all those weird kind of imagery and thoughts and emotional processing that you get out of dreaming while you're awake and having this energy activation. And it's just this completely wild experience that is, you just kind of have to experience it to understand it, because it sounds super weird. It is kind of woo-woo, but it's really awesome. And it can take you into these like really deep healings. I've had people come through one of these 2-hour breathworks and say they feel like they just got through 3 hours or 3 years of, going through therapy. They've like reached these huge healing things. And another thing that makes shamanic breathwork different is there's processing. So you do get that feeling like you went through therapy, because you get to actually work through it and ground it and know what came out of that experience. So some breathworks, the first time I went to a breathwork similar to shamanic breathwork, and I forget what it was called. It was like the breathing shaman, something. It was something very similar, but it wasn't the same thing. And I had this crazy experience, and I felt like almost an out of body experience. And I felt like I was like with other people, and I was doing other things, and I was like somewhere, who knows where, like floating through some other realm. And there was this vision of a snake and these feelings of confidence. And there were all these things that came through that were just like overwhelming and wild and crazy. And when the event was over, we just had a few minutes to ground, and I was really ungrounded and spacey feeling. And I had no idea what the heck that just was. I just felt like overwhelmed. What do I do with this? What is this? Like, clearly there's something to this, because that just unlocked all this crazy stuff in my brain. Yeah. But what do I do with it? And so I went to the facilitators, and I was like, this is what happened. This is what I experienced. And their response was, they just like nodded and were like, cool. I was like, no, like this isn't gonna work for me. So that's how I started like looking for other breathworks and other things like that.
Wow.
And eventually found shamanic breathwork. And Linda Starwolf, who really kind of created shamanic breathwork, she was a psychologist or psychiatrist, I don't remember, but she worked in the mental health field. And so she knows the importance of processing and grounding and doing these things to kind of like integrate that experience. And so finding that piece where once you do the breathwork and you have this wild, crazy experience, then you do an art process and you share and you discuss, and you can kind of like get it out and ground it and make more sense of it. And a trained facilitator can tell you like what kind of symbolism is in what you've drawn or what you're talking about, and help you make more sense of it. And so it really is a much more in-depth healing process, was for me at least. Yeah. So I think it's wild.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Didn't I hear you say last week that there's actually like a little farm or somewhere they go to do this, or there's a place you go, or do they do it at home? Or can you do it at home?
You can do it at home. I'm doing my sessions all on Zoom at this point.
Oh, you're doing them on Zoom.
Yeah, I'm doing them on Zoom. And some people that is really helpful because they can be more uninhibited. So when there is breathwork in person, a lot of times you'll find it like at a yoga studio, or somebody might have, a farm retreat, or, something like that, where there's like a big room people can be in, and the music plays really loud, and the facilitators are there to do some energy work or body work if you're okay with it, and kind of be there as like a safety check for the people who are going through the breathing. And when you're doing the breathing and you're trying to, shake out whatever you need to get rid of, some people will be, wiggling around or moving around. And then I think we were talking before, I said, like, when you go to yoga class and there's always that one older lady in there who's like, ah, like moaning with what she's doing, there will be people that are like yelling and crying and just really letting go. And so not everybody's okay with that, or they feel self-conscious or, just inhibited in some way. If you're in a group of people you've never met before, you're looking around and you're like, well, I don't want to be the weird lady over there moaning in the corner. But if you're at home and you're on Zoom and your camera's off and you're muted, you can be as weird as you want to be. Nobody has to know about it. And you can sometimes get more out of it. So
I think that would work for me. Like if I, or, I'm not the kind of person that I wouldn't want to say I'm not a people person. I am. I'm just not, touchy-feely, up close, like a whole bunch of people around me person.
Yeah. Well, some people, there has to be a certain level of trust. And so even if you had that trust with the facilitator, you might not have that trust with 30 other people in the room, or you and your best friend go and do it and you might be able to let go. But there's a certain level of like, it is kind of intimate. You're doing really deep healing work. And so if you feel like, intimacy is something that needs to build, then you might be more inhibited. Yeah. So I think it's nice now that came online, because people kind of have the option. You can find facilitators online. You can find facilitators in person. I think some people are starting to do in person again. And so whichever style it works for you, because everybody's got different personalities. So it's kind of nice.
So by doing this, are we releasing like gunk inside of us? Like what are we just getting back in touch with our original self? How does it work exactly?
That's kind of a good way to say it. Starwolf sometimes says we're accessing our inner shaman. So you're kind of getting to that part that knows what you need. And you can set an intention before a breath work, and certain music sets are designed to have different intentions with it too, to get more into the heart space or into the solar plexus or whatever kind of issues you might be working on. But really, it's different every time, and it's going to do what you need it to do. So you might have a journey where you have this realization of some sort of limiting thought pattern or family cycle or something that you can now that you're aware of it, you can bring it to light and kind of work on it. You might have something shadow work that might kind of show up for you. You might have just a really good, like, restful, feels like you're sleeping, even though you're probably not, because the music is really loud. But your body might just need to rest. And so it can be anywhere. There are people who will do it, and it's funny when you see it in a group, because then there becomes this like weird breathwork session envy. And you may see this in other things too, but like one person is saying, well, I had this amazing journey and I was flying like an eagle over the mountains and I saw my ancestors and we were dancing around a fire. And they have these like big visual like sagas that go on. And then other people are like, well, I started the breathing and then I think I fell asleep and then I heard the drum call me back, and they feel like they did it wrong, but that's just what they needed,
That's what they needed. I do meditation a lot, and a lot of times I try to will myself not to fall asleep, but if that person's really good and they get me into that state, and I sometimes I'll also
I think
like right now I'm looking at my eyes. I put like Visine and they're still red. And it's because I've been at this since 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And you're just exhausted. So like when you get into a state where it's really relaxing, it's really hard to stay lucid.
Yeah, it is. And sometimes you want to, and sometimes you want the benefit of whatever that is, but sometimes the benefit is the rest. I mean, if you're using meditation for stress release and for relaxation and you fall asleep, like, when are you ever less stressed and more relaxed? So if you get a good sleep out of it, I still call that a win. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, I do that often. I do. I have meditation. I purposely put them on because I get in the recliner and I know I'm going to fall asleep. It's just, it's always shocking when I get all the way through, because I'm like, wow, I must have had everything I needed today. But normally we don't. Normally we go into that deep REM and that's it. We're gone. That's
Yeah.
it. Amazingly, I have a hypnotist that after my, it's a long story, but I had a hypnotist. He's passed away now, but I have a couple of sessions, and there's one I listen to, I would say weekly, and it's an amazing journey he took me on. And in it I get like a cleanse, and I go up to like my, just into that higher place, and I'm able to cleanse myself. Now I feel like I've healed myself by using this, and
Yeah.
I've used it multiple times now. I would say like 100 times, and it's amazing because I still get ahas from it.
Yeah.
But it takes me up until this. I mean, I can feel myself going through my third eye. I don't know why, but that always hurts when I go. But I go into some place, and I just kind of hang out there. Most of the time, I sleep through it.
Yeah.
So weird, isn't it?
Yeah, I really think that there is something to that sleeping brain. Like, and I haven't seen a lot of research or anything like that around it, but I do think there's power in that. I do think there's power in that. And I think that some of the energy work and healing work that we do is so close to that sleep state. Like, to me, really the best way that I can describe the shamanic breath work sometimes is it's like a dream. Like, you're not totally asleep, but it's like a dream. And you can process through things. So the same way when we dream, our brain processes emotions and actions of the day and whatever we're going through at that time, and sometimes even trauma and all those things it processes subconsciously. And through the breath work we're able to kind of make some of that conscious, and then I think you kind of have the whole cycle in the healing, because when you can make that subconscious conscious, it's easier to consciously make the decision not to do it again, or to break it, or to say, there's an empowerment to that.
Mm,
Yeah.
beautiful. You know, it's so weird. Years ago, I know it now because as I think back on the past, I realized that I was doing so many things, not realizing what I was doing, like being completely disconnected from the thing that was being done. I don't know if you know what I mean, but
Yeah.
it's almost like it's different once you're awake or aware. You know, I guess it's conscious awareness.
Yes, absolutely. I just had this discussion with somebody else. She did a podcast and we had to pick a word to like do our episode on, and I chose awareness. And
Mhm.
she was like, "I'm so glad you said that instead of awakening, because awakening, people feel like, aha, I have awakened." But awareness is more what it really is, because once you become aware of things, then you're aware of what else is there and what else is next, and you're aware of what maybe you don't know sometimes, and what you haven't done and what you have done and how far you've come, and things that you just didn't even enter your field of awareness before.
It amazes me to think that all of this stuff has always been available to us, like the
Yeah.
knowledge, the whatever it is. But we've tried, like, and I feel like for myself in particular, I don't know if I told you my story. I was 500 pounds and I was in a wheelchair for 7 years.
Oh my gosh.
And I was also born in the poorest city in America. At that time, it was Camden, New Jersey, on the poorest street in Camden, which was Haddon Avenue, Kane, that area. And I was raped by the time I was 18 months old.
Oh my
I've been
gosh.
put into a foster home. It was an ugly life. But I went to my grandmother's at 10, and she raised me in the suburbs. So I got a good go there with a really good school, made a lot of good friends, got a good education, and I later went to Alaska and spent 15 years there. Had my
Wow.
daughter there, had my first marriage there, and I've done a lot of traveling. I've been very lucky. One of the things I talk about in the co-authoring, co-authoring the book, and I talk about I had a speech impediment
Mm-hmm.
and I have a learning disability. So everything I do that is communication, whether it's the
Yeah.
podcast or the YouTube or the readings themselves, it's
Yeah.
all a miracle. I feel like it's all. And
Well, and you know, so much of that being part of your life and having to communicate your needs and having to communicate, you know, so much and making sure that your voice is heard and not lost in that and helping other people be heard. And, you know, you got a lot of throat chakra, solar plexus stuff going on in this
yes,
lifetime, girl.
Jennifer, it's so weird that you said that your voice be heard, because the thing that I discovered through therapy, because I went through regression therapy in my
Ah,
30s, and I'm almost 60 now, but in my 30s, I went through regression therapy, and they took me into this place, and it turned out I had heard this the day that I had gotten raped. It was, I came to the step to ask for help, but imagine being 18 months crying hysterically, right?
mm,
And I was at the top of the steps. I still remember my brother, my oldest brother, who's passed. He was at the bottom of the steps. He was a little kid, and I remember the house completely. And that's how I was able to get confirmation about age and everything, because it
mm.
was a very particular house. It was 3 stories, the 3 story house. My aunt had 13 kids. So
Oh my
she
gosh.
needed a 3 story house.
Yeah.
And that's what I remember. I remembered the layout of the bedrooms. And when I told my mother, um, she remembered the exact street, where it was, everything, the time frame.
Wow.
And I had came to the step, and was crying. And my aunt said, send that kid back upstairs. Children are meant to be seen, not heard.
Ah,
And when I was taking the one boy who raped me, took me back up and raped me a second time.
ah,
And I grew up with a speech impediment. I also, as I mentioned, was fat, and I've come to learn that that's protection. The speech impediment was the not being able to speak. Like,
yeah.
all of this knowledge has come to me. Like, what I was doing was protection, of course, in my own way, but
Yeah, and
yeah,
that speech, I mean, from that moment and hearing her say they're supposed to be seen and not heard, that's how shadow work works. That's how it happens. That's how things go into the shadow. You know, hearing your voice and being heard is not a bad thing in any way, but you in that child in that moment, you're traumatized and someone tells you this is the correct way to be. That's where you put it. That's amazing.
it was crazy. As a young person, I guess I rebelled. I was a singer. I sang.
Ah.
I mean, once I learned how to speak properly, I became a singer. By the time I was 13, I was singing gospel, and I was a big mouth. You know what I mean? I became a big mouth. And I think that's why, to overcompensate for hearing
Yeah.
that. And
Well,
I
and
was,
that's your own way of like healing
yeah,
without really quite knowing what you're doing.
what I was
You're doing
doing.
shadow work without knowing you're doing shadow work. Yeah, that's
I
cool.
mean, went into sales. I mean, when I say a big mouth, I mean a real big mouth, like a ham. And like this, I remember that's one of the things. I had won an award, and every time I won an award, this one lady who was working, I was a Mary Kay at the time, and so they give a lot of awards. And I had one, I guess, like Miss Go Give, and I went up and I started crying. And she says, I've noticed when you come up and you make the awards, and you talk about your speech or whatever, you always talk about being raped, and you start to cry. And she's like, it's I saw it once, I saw it twice, I saw it thrice. I want to talk with you. That's how I ended up getting into regression therapy. She
Mm,
saw there was a problem.
yeah.
And I was just a big crybaby. I mean, even as an adult, because those tears never left.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
always that kid at the top of the stairs crying for help.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
craziness. But I love that I get to use that voice now, and to
Yeah.
talk with people like you. I mean, I don't want to get all deep because it can get heavy, right? But when
Sure.
you stop and you look back now, and I'm like, well, I use it for good, because
Yeah.
now I know I have a voice, and I know that it can help other people with their voice. And, and it's just, I know I'm on the right path. So it's all a good thing. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
yes.
I love it.
And I've done my own healing. I do sacred soul light healing. I don't know if you've heard of the sacred soul light healing.
We talked a little bit about it last time, but I hadn't heard of it before, so I don't really
Yeah.
know much about it, but it sounded pretty interesting. Yeah.
I like to hear what you do, because I studied under Alicia Hartzell, and I love her.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she's
I think I'm
wonderful.
in her group on Facebook.
Are you? Oh, I love her. I love her. So yeah, she's the one who's been training me in the sacred soul light path. And so I'm
Gotcha.
really excited about that, because if it wasn't for Alicia, I don't know what I would have done. Like, between her and that hypnotist, they just
Yeah.
pulled me out of a very dark place, because it all went it I was just in that moment of abandonment again.
Yeah.
And of course, that, the little kid at the top of the stairs crying. And so it's just amazing that these healing practices really do work.
They do. And I think it's cool how we find these people. Like, I doubt that you went online and were like, what is sacred soul light healing?
No.
But you find like the right person for you at the right time. And had you found her at a different time when you weren't quite at that point and ready for that healing, you might have just glossed right over and not paid attention. And that's definitely been something in my life. Like, there are healers that I've gone to who I know if they showed up 5 or 10 years earlier, we never would have gotten together. I would have thought they were crazy, or they or just didn't think I needed it, or things like that. Hadn't reached a point where I had pulled back enough layers to be ready for that. So I always think it's cool to hear the stories of how people like found their mentors and the kind of healing they got into. And I found, I guess, well, I guess I went for energy work first. When I moved to Asheville, I'm in Asheville, North Carolina,
Yeah.
which has a high concentration of woo woo people. Like, there's yoga on every corner, and, kids grow up doing Reiki. Like, it's kind of wild.
That's
But I grew up in Baltimore, so I did not grow up around
wow.
any of that stuff at
Oh
all.
my gosh, I was in Baltimore as a little kid.
Yeah. So,
Yes, wow.
it's a completely different culture. And so I was kind of interested in it, but also really skeptical of it, just didn't know. And I had a friend who I trusted, and she would talk about this woman she would go to for energy work. And she was sort of like spiritual counseling, but not totally. And I still, to this day, I've gone to her for years and I don't quite know what she calls herself or what to call her kind of healing. She does a lot of different healing. She does some craniosacral, and she does some hands-on healing, and all kinds of things, but I don't know if she's got like an official name for what she does.
Mhm, mhm.
But I went to her for a session, and I've had a thing with my arm since I was a kid where just all of a sudden I didn't have the same range of motion that I used to have. And we went to different doctors and nobody could quite figure it out, and it wasn't like something had happened, but it just didn't never quite had the same range of motion, and I had a lot of pain in it for a while. And it got better, but sometimes if I was under a lot of pressure or stress, it might kind of flare up again. And I had gone to this first session of healing, and she did some sort of like pretzel movement with my arm. I don't even know what she did. And we were talking about childhood, and all of a sudden I just started crying, and there were just tears and tears and tears. And next thing I knew, my arm was moving better than it had moved in probably 15 years. And it was
Wow.
wild. And so that was when I was like, okay, well, I don't know what's going on and I don't quite get it, but there's something to this. Like, I definitely see results. I feel different. I felt a healing happen through that. And so I started going to sessions with her and learning from her, and looking more into energy work. And like, I read Barbara Brennan's Hands of Light and was like, what is this craziness? And it's just wild. And I found a friend who, she knew someone who was teaching a Reiki workshop, and she was like, I just think this is something that you'd be interested in and you should check it out. And her workshop was full, but I found someone else teaching that weekend, and I was like, what the heck? I'm going to go take this workshop and see what it's all about. And I went in completely open-minded, knew nothing about it, and it was so cool to be able to like sense energy and learn more about how to do that. And there's a lot of pieces of that I think I did kind of naturally and didn't realize what I was doing. And so being able to kind of put a name to it, put a framework to it, have a use for it really seemed cool. So I kept going with Reiki and went up to the master level.
Wow.
And as I would work with people doing Reiki and doing energy work, I call it intuitive energy work now, because I start with Reiki and channeling this kind of pure source energy, but then I just let spirit take over. And some of it feels almost like shamanic work. And there are, spirits and elements that assist in the healing I don't consider myself a shaman by any means, but I do feel like those same realms assist in the healing. And I just kind of go where it's needed. And some people are ready to go deeper than others, and some people, know what they need, and other people are in for a surprise. But
I love it. I mean, the whole idea of, I've not really looked at going into Reiki in per se, but I know a lot of people who have, and it's, I think it would only enhance my knowledge of the energy and the power it has.
Yeah, and there are different kinds of Reiki. So, go with the one that calls to you, because some people are into one kind more than another, and or get more out of one kind than another. I do Usui Tibetan Reiki, and I think now Holy Fire Reiki is a big thing, and there's Reiki Tomo, and there's all kinds of different kinds of Reiki. But
wow, it's a whole new world. I never even knew. Wow.
Yeah, but the main source of it is it's a way to channel pure source energy, and what helps me is you learn the feeling of how the energy moves in one direction, like through the crown and out the hands, or out whatever way you're using. And that helps me when I'm working with clients to not take on their energy, and also to make sure that the source energy is where it starts, instead of my energy is where it starts. So they're not picking up my stuff. They're getting that pure energy, that higher self kind of energy that they need, instead of whatever I'm dealing with that day, which they definitely don't need. I probably don't even need. So
that's something I want to work on, Jen.
Yeah.
I'm a double Capricorn. I'm running on at the mouth, but I'm a double Capricorn, and my sun is on the ascendant, basically. And I also have Mercury in the first house, and my chart ruler Saturn. So basically everything I think, feel, and it's right there. Like I have no mask at all, and it really bothers me. The closest mask I have is just when I put my makeup on. But other than that, I mean, I feel like the energy of me is really easy for people to pick up on. And I have yet to master how to mask that.
Yeah, well, and I mean, there's a certain part of it you don't want to mask, because then it feels like it's not you anymore. But boundaries are a good thing to have, and they take practice.
Like I don't want to lose my authenticity, but I also don't want to get stepped on. And I feel like when you have your sun in the 12th house on the ascendant, it's easy to get stepped on. So it's like, because you're wearing your heart on your sleeve, everyone can see it.
Yeah.
It's an awful thing. I can't, I feel like in this life, I've dealt with that. So going into the little bit I've done with the Sacred Soul Light healing, it's helped me to deal with all of the gunk, because I've gotten trampled along the way. And I guess some people do, especially if they don't know.
Right.
As an astrologer, I know it's because I have Neptune on the midheaven, which means I really can't see. I'm just feeling.
Yes.
And most people aren't. Some people can see, they can plot, they can plan. I mean, they got it all laid out. Right. And I've never been that person. I've been completely feeling this whole time.
Yeah.
And it's like being in the dark, just feeling your way. It makes you highly intuitive, but it kind of removes you. And I should say this, maybe because I'm empathic, right? Some of us do it. I've removed myself from a lot of outside sources so that it's not overwhelming to get trampled a lot from outside sources.
Right. And I hear that from a lot of people, and some of the people who will come to me for like coaching kind of stuff, that's one of the big things, is like, how do I not lose this sensitive, amazing part of myself, but how do I not also take everyone else's part of themselves with me? And really what we start with is grounding, and making a practice of grounding. And some people need to do it. I've told people, like, set an alarm on your phone, like ground, once an hour or something, until it becomes more natural to just do it so many times a day. And grounding and cleansing, and then setting boundaries, and different ways to set boundaries. Some people will tell you the number one way that people people say is like make the bubble. And I'm sure you've heard like create a bubble around yourself and only good can be within the bubble and nothing can come on the outside. And when I did that, that never worked for me. That just always felt like a fight. Like I'm just constantly pushing the edge of this bubble and like how far, can hold it at arm's length, and I'm getting tired and everything's right there knocking on the bubble, it didn't work for me. And one of my teachers gave me this method that she said is from Aikido, and it's about you being transparent. And so instead of having those emotions and those negative things, and it's not always negative either, like it can be happy stuff that you're picking up from other people. It just gets exhausting because it's not yours. And so when that stuff comes through that's not yours, you can learn to let it pass through you so it doesn't get stuck, or at least less of it gets stuck. I mean, if it's like your kids or something, you're going to have more feels, you're going to get it stuck easier. But if it's like the guy on the train, you don't need to take it with you. And so it can kind of pass through. And so you just imagine yourself as transparent and it flows through. And that felt so much better to me for a protective way, because I didn't have to fight it. It wasn't that bubble. I just had to be and not be as sticky, And so then once you have that, there's less that you've collected throughout the day. And when you take a shower or when you're doing your grounding, you can just imagine all the rest of that kind of like going out your roots, sending it to the earth, sending it wherever you want to send it to get rid of, and to really kind of set and work with your spirit guides and say, hey, help me out with this. Like make a little bodyguard team if you need to, like these people cannot keep doing this to me, and they can help you deflect too. So yeah, there's ways to work with that, but that transparent Aikido method was a game changer for me. So I like
love that.
sharing
that is
that
the
one.
best advice.
Yeah,
because a lot of times that's exactly what it is, Jen. You're picking up other people's stuff.
Yeah,
and it sticks. Maybe someone says something nasty, or they're having a bad day. Suddenly you're having a bad day.
Right. And you don't even know why you're having a bad day. And like I said, it's not always negative stuff too. It's other people's joy and everything. It just becomes exhausting because you're carrying something that's not yours. Yeah. And people had a lot of trouble with that when the pandemic started, because there was so much like global anxiety and stress and fear. And so there was a lot of that, like people even saying, I feel like there's this issue and I don't think it's me. Like, where is this coming from? How do I deal with this?
People talk about, there's this going on, and I know this stuff is going on, but I'm so not in it. I don't. I'm not there. I don't want to go there.
Right.
Wherever there is, they don't seem happy. I don't want to be in that place. So it's like goes right through. Like maybe that's over my head or
there. You go. Yeah, that
I'm
one.
not paying attention to it. I don't put on the news. I was before the election. And then once that was over, I'm like, okay, I'll let them handle it now. Whatever's going to go on, goes on. And I'm sure we're going to work it out. But it's stressful.
Yeah. And I said something the other day. A friend and I were talking about the news and like how much we watch the news or don't watch the news. And I said, I like to know enough to be informed, but not so much that I'm inflamed. Like it can make you so angry or scared or upset in different ways, depending on which side of whatever thing you're on, So yeah, I want to know what's happening and I want to be able to make informed decisions. But I don't, once it gets into that thing where I'm like, I got to turn it off. This is too much.
I feel like if it's really important, I can get that in the sound bites or on YouTube or something, because it is really overwhelming, and it's been a bad couple of years. And so I think whatever we can do to do the transparent thing now, let's utilize that as people, because I think a lot of us are carrying one of the things I know I do with the sacred soul light healing is sometimes I'm working on the group consciousness, because sometimes people will get involved in that group consciousness. Yeah, there might be 100,000 people feeling that way, but do you have to feel that way? I mean,
right.
That's your personal choice. Why would you jump in there with that?
Right.
Just, it's one of those things. And so I know a lot of people don't think that way, but they're just getting involved in all the emotion.
Yeah, you get swept up. It's easy to get swept up. And so the more that you know yourself and the more that you know what you feels like, and you're not taking on quite as much. And so you can get down to that core of you and know, like, this is me being triggered, or this is me being happy, or me being sad, or whatever. It's easier to not always jump on the bandwagon, because you can say, well, like, well, that, yeah, I mean, I get where that's going. It's easy to get swept up in that first impression. You're like, I'm on the bandwagon. And then you're like, wait a second, how did I get here? This doesn't make sense. This isn't for me. Or I just don't want to stay here for that long. Or sometimes you need to be swept up on it to make you take action in some other way. But yeah, it's not, you have to really know yourself at that core, that essence, before you can really separate.
I think what I did, Jen, was I took time, I cut off the news, and I just let myself feel. And I did that for about a month. And I realized after that time that a lot of the negative stuff that was going on, I realized it was being generated because it wasn't within me.
Yeah.
I have none of that in me. So why should I, bury myself in that negativity if I don't have to?
Right. Right. I like to kind of read the headlines, and if there's something I feel like I need to know, then I'll go deeper. And then so I kind of know what's going on. And if I need to know more, I'll know more. And if I read the headline and my first instinct is fear, or, something like that, I know I'm being manipulated in some way, shape, or form. And that's probably not a story that, or not the source of the story that I need to read, at least. Yeah.
I got a story about fear, and I just realized it and remember you were saying that. When COVID first came out last year, my brother Kevin worried himself into an aneurysm and stroke and a heart attack.
Oh my gosh.
We thought we were going to lose him.
Wow.
And as he was getting his speech back, and it's barely back, I mean, it's slurred because he had a second stroke. But he said it was COVID. I was nervous about COVID.
Wow.
And to think that it caused that much anxiety, that much stress. I think he said he smoked weed and he did something, or I forget, whatever it was. And that was it. He had an aneurysm. He fell on the floor. Luckily, he lived in a facility where someone came to check on him.
Yeah.
And because, he's in his 50s or whatever. But yeah. Wow. And that's just it's scary, but that's what fear can do. Fear can actually just feel like we're really living out whatever that fear is, even if it's just in our head. And it will take us to a place where our body will respond in such a negative way. Like in his case, I mean, I guess his blood pressure, and because he had diabetes, everything must have just went through the roof. And, but I've monitored myself to make sure I mentally and emotionally will not allow myself to go into that type of fear, because,
and there's a point where fear is needed to propel you into something, or to protect you from something. But then there's also that point where it goes on to a level that it's just destructive, and our bodies carry so much of that, even if we think we're pushing it aside, but our subconscious is still living in that fear state. Our body's still holding that. And so it's a holistic kind of thing. Our thoughts do become our reality.
It's crazy, isn't it? I will say this in a positive note.
Yes.
You had heard me say earlier, I was 500 pounds in a wheelchair. And one of the things I used to say all the time was, if I could just get back down to a size 14, or I could just get down to a 14 or a 16, and I'm a 14.
Yay!
I'm right in there, right? But in my mind now, I'm trying to get down to like an 8, 9, 10. But I'm okay where I'm at. I'm okay. But it's just the idea that we put it into the universe. We say these things in the back of our minds, or we write it down, and we just say it over and over again. There was no specific number for me because I was so big. I just knew I wanted to wear a size 14 or buy clothes from a magazine. You know?
And that is the kind of thing, the more specific that you can be, the more you're likely you are to have it manifest, and the more that you see that as a reality. Now, if I was like, I'm going to make $10 million and I never think I'm going to make $10 million, I'm never going to make $10 million. But if I'm like, next year, I'm going to make, $80,000, like I could make that happen because it's something that I can see is like a tangible thing that I could make happen. And so I feel like that you're exactly right. Like saying it, putting it out there, it holds you accountable. It creates that energy in the universe. It sends out that intention. There's so much to those words. And again, that's you speaking up, sending the words out there. Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing
I love
when we
it.
think about what we can do with our minds and with our hearts. Like once we know, we can achieve so much, and it's a beautiful thing. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So I'm looking. We've got like 7 minutes we've been running on. I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to let you talk for a minute because I want anything that you want to share with us. If you have any specials, I heard you say something about a 5K thingy, and also I want to make sure I have all your links or any type of offer. If you want to put that in the chat, that's good. But anything you want to end with, just to let our listeners know.
Sure. Yeah. I think the best way to connect with me is to join my Facebook group. And the Facebook group is called Shine Every Day because I like the idea of us like shining our lights and making it a practice to do it every day. And it's become this nice little community of people who just like are joyful and share that joy and sometimes share struggles and help each other out, that kind of thing. And so anytime that I do have specials, anytime I have a new program coming out or, anything coming up, the Facebook group, they're the first ones to know. They're like my little VIPs. And it's completely free to join. So do it. And then you're on the VIP list. But I will have a 5-day event called Jumpstart Your Intuition that comes in the middle of July. So keep an eye out for that. Either on my Facebook page or at my website, lightenyourspace.com. Mm-hmm. And those are probably the best ways to get a hold of me. I try and keep things kind of focused. I don't want to spread myself too thin because I know I don't have the time and focus to do Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and YouTube and 20 different places. So I try and stick it to Facebook and our programs there, and that usually is a little easier. But if you're not on Facebook, if you're not on Facebook, the programs can all be done over Zoom and or in person if you're in Asheville, North Carolina. So just you can reach out to me through my website, and if that's Facebook, I know some people are anti-Facebook, and that's okay. But I do one-on-one and group coaching, and I do energy work sessions remotely over Zoom or in person in Asheville. And I also do the breath work remotely or in person, shamanic breathwork. So if you're interested, get in touch.
Yes, definitely. And that was one more time.
Lighten Your Space.
LightenYourSpace.com, right?
Yep.
LightenYourSpace.com. And the group was Awake. What was that one again?
Shine Every Day.
Shine Every Day.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if I'm already in that group, but if I'm not, I'm
you are, I think. Yeah. I think you are. Yep.
Well, Jen, you know what? I love you, and I do. I can't wait to I just feel like one day I got to have you back again because you're so much fun to have.
I would love to. I've had a great time. I think you are wonderful. I like your energy a lot.
Thank you so much.
Aww.
It's been so much fun having you here.
Yeah.
And I will stay in touch with you, of course, in your group. And I'll let you know when I'm going to get this onto the podcast and to other places. All right.
Sounds wonderful.
Okay. Well, this has been Adrienne with Astrology, a Look Inside, with our Astrology Lovers podcast. Today is March 13th, 2021. And I've had Jen Pearson here with me, and it's been a blast. And I hope the rest of you guys have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Much love and light to all.